Hello, my name is Anita Bapu, and I'm a professor of management and organizations in the Gallo Management Program in the School of Engineering at UC Merced. And today I'm going to start talking to you about teams and teamwork. This is the first of a series of videos, in fact, 3 videos that I'm making, and I hope that they will help you perform more effectively as a team in your course. So to get started, what I wanted to begin with is essentially a definition of what is a team. And more importantly, how are teams different from groups? And the key distinction between a group and a team is the notion of mutual accountability. And what we mean here is that while all teams are groups, not all groups are teams. I'm going to say that again. While all teams are groups, not all groups are teams. In fact, teams are a subset of groups wherein team members are held mutually accountable for the work and the performance that the group does. And in the context of courses and instruction, this looks like grades and points being awarded to the team as a whole versus individual team members. The distinction is also powerful in that it drives how people act and behave and think and feel in the context of doing group work. And so very much so, we promote the idea of mutual accountability as the way to truly drive teamwork. So with that in mind, the next question I want to address is, what exactly do teams do? Teamwork is a word that's used very casually in everyday language, but from a more technical science perspective, what teams do is that they collaborate. Collaboration being the act of working with some other together to produce something of value. And so again, going back to mutual accountability, we want to make sure that teams are set up to succeed in the way in which people come together and work together to produce this mutually accountable performance or task. So we think of structuring collaboration as an important part of what teams need to do, especially when they first start, which is what this video is focused on. What do you do as teams when you first start up? And in order to understand what you need to do, you need to understand a little bit about the nature of collaboration. In collaboration, there are 3 very essential parts that individuals need to be engaged in. The first one is speaking up, saying what you mean, saying what you think, being honest, and being forthright in how you are going to work together. The second part is understanding that there's not one right way insofar as groups and teams are made up of different individuals. And so the way in which you collaborate needs to be customized for your particular context. And that leads to this notion of experimentation, of trying certain things that are recommended, reflecting, which is the third part, on what's working, and constantly iterating through this trial and error process, focused specifically on teamwork and collaboration. So why do we promote the idea of structuring collaboration? That's because by definition, when you bring more than one individual to work on a task together, you at some level are managing diversity of many different kinds. And the key to successful collaboration is figuring out how best to integrate these differences that are present and, quite frankly, represented by the multiple individuals who are contributing to a team. So on that note, what I want to explain to you is, from a prescriptive perspective, how teams usually develop. Much like an individual that has predictable developmental phases during the duration of their lives, teams as a social and human entity also have very predictable stages of development. And the stages of development are predictable in the sense that they represent important transitions in the team's understanding of their own being, their reflection, their experimentation, And we see evidence of these stages in most teams as they evolve from starting out to completion of whatever tasks that they've been assigned and are being held mutually accountable for. So the first stage of team development is forming, and that's the stage that you are likely in when you're watching this video. You have just been assigned to a team, and it's now your opportunity to think about more structurally how to move forward as a working entity, how to combine your diversity, your knowledge, your skills. And so in this first forming stage, it's a lot about understanding who we are, what we bring to the table, and what it is that we might be setting out to do. What are we trying to accomplish? And insofar as you begin that conversation, the next normal stage that typically emerges is the stage of storming. This is where we have to grapple with who we are, why we are, how we are going to be. And in the stage of storming, this is the first occurrence of when teams actually grapple with integrating differences, because maybe we don't agree on what exactly the task is. Maybe we don't agree individually on what the goal should be. Maybe we're not sure of the roles or responsibilities that we are being assigned individually and or how we're negotiating those among ourselves. And so this is a stage where a lot of clarification happens. And when teams start out, we often see them experimenting and reflecting and going back and forth between forming and storming until they truly get what it is they're doing. And then they move to the stage of norming around what it is they're doing. They come up with a set of shared understanding, shared goals, shared processes. Sometimes teams don't go through the storming phase. They get together and they don't have any disagreements about how they should proceed, or it's possible that they haven't really considered what it is they're going to do, or they don't have a way to have that perspective. So they move straight from forming into norming and they start performing. They go out there and they start executing against the norms that they have come up with. And soon in the process of performing, they realize, wait a minute, I don't understand that. Why are we doing this? What are we doing? These are sorts of questions that come up, and that drives them all the way back into the storming phase. So they can go through that process again of clarifying, experimenting, reflecting on what it is they're doing. And then they come up with a new set of norms and they go back to performing. So although the model of team development that I have depicted to you and is often depicted this way is very linear, there's a lot of iteration between these stages. And traditionally, depending on how long teams are together to perform these tasks that they're assigned, sometimes they have a defined task, the teams end at the end of that, or they're just ad hoc teams, existing teams that are performing different tasks over time. They may stay between forming, storming, norming, and performing and oscillate and iterate here for long periods of time before they end. The ending point is the adjourning point. It's the point where you do the summative reflection. You think about how things have gone. You reflect individually, sometimes more so than as a group, on whether you will work with these individuals again, whether you would want to work with these individuals again, whether you would want to do the work that you were assigned, whether you would do it differently, whether you do it better. So the more conclusive ending is called adjourning. But some teams don't get to adjourning for a very long time. And in the context of engineering capstone teams, this would be driven by your project timelines and your client deliverables and so forth. So just to give you a bit of background, we expect, and you should expect, that at certain times in your team development that you may have disagreement. And it's important that you work through those disagreements and come up with a set of norms and or agreements that allow you to move forward and perform. And you may come right back to rethinking about how you're working together based on evidence. This is the experimentation and reflection. But through all of this, it's really important that you speak up as individuals, that you share what you're thinking, because therein lies the beauty of teamwork, which is that teamwork benefits the most when individuals contribute what they know and work together to integrate that so we have better solutions and better project work and tasks that come out of the team development process. So in terms of structuring teamwork, it's really important to think about a team contract, and that's really the deliverable that you are assigned to provide as part of this assignment and this module in the course, which is a team contract. So what is a team contract? At the most basic level, it's a document. It's a document wherein you sit down and have a conversation as a group of individuals and discuss, how you're going to manage your diversity as you move through these team development stages. I want you to anticipate that you're going to have disagreements. And so to think mindfully about how will you handle those disagreements, to think about how will you integrate your different lives and schedules and commitments so that all of you can give the time necessary and the focus to get this project done, to work on this team, to discuss scheduling, to consider, for example, what are your individual strengths? What do you bring to the group that is in common and potentially different from others on the team? And therefore, what roles and responsibilities are you best suited to do? In the event that multiple of you have the same expertise and or the same desires for performance and contributions, then you're going to have to negotiate that. But nonetheless, the team contract structures your collaboration by asking you preemptively, and then as you proceed through group development, to keep revisiting this notion of how are we going to be, who are we, in the forming case, these are the questions that come up. In the storming case, it's negotiating how you're going to be, and then norming and performing and iterating through this over time. So the document called a team contract summarizes and forces to a large degree this conversation, but it also explicitly puts in writing the agreements you make about the norms, how are you going to act with one another? Are you going to meet a couple of times a week? How are you going to deal with absences if people are not able to deliver? What's the protocols around how you're going to collaborate and combine your efforts and integrate your diversity to produce the outcomes that you're setting yourselves up to perform and you're agreeing to perform. So it's a living document. It should be a living document. It should be revisited each and every time you feel you're going through a transition or new information becomes available that requires you to essentially restorm and renorm around what it is you're doing. And so that's the assignment for today and for your foreseeable forming stage is getting you through this forming, storming, norming process by asking you to create a team contract.